Let's start with a brutal truth in being betrayed, rejected, or emotionally discarded by someone you trusted. That is no small thing. It can feel like your identity has been shattered, like you've fallen into a pit where nothing makes sense anymore. And I won't sugarcoat this. When someone breaks your heart, it's easy, very easy, to want to lash out, to retaliate, to break something of theirs in return, often their ego. Heartbreak isn't just emotional distress. It's the disintegration of your psychological framework. When she leaves, when she betrays, when she breaks what you thought was sacred, it's not just your heart that breaks. It's your world, your assumptions, your narrative. Pain isn't trivial. It tears through the fabric of who you thought you were. And the worst part is that nobody can feel it for you. You carry it alone. You wake up in the middle of the night because your subconscious won't let you forget. That's not weakness. That's a signal. Something inside you is dying, and something else is waiting to be born if you dare. When a woman breaks your heart, she doesn't just remove herself. She removes a future you were building. The structure collapses, it's psychological demolition. And in that rubble, you're going to find pieces of yourself you never knew were broken. The agony is the price of revelation. This is where your falsehoods are exposed. Not through peace, but through fire. And pain, if you listen to it, will teach you more about who you are than any moment of happiness ever could. You can't grow in comfort. You don't evolve when you're secure. You evolve when you're exposed, when you're fragile, when you're on your knees with nothing left to hold on to but your breath. That's when character is hammered into shape, on the anvil of despair. Don't run from that. Don't mask it with pleasure. Don't distract yourself into numbness. Sit in it. Let it consume you and then learn to breathe in its flames. That's how you earn strength. Not inherited strength, earn strength. Every man wants to be strong until life hands him the chance to become it. This is that chance. Most will waste it. They'll spiral, blame, drink, chase, distract. Anything but confront the abyss. Because the abyss requires honesty, and honesty is terrifying. It doesn't care about your pride. It doesn't care what you think you deserve. It only gives you what you earn. And right now, it's offering you a choosing suffer blindly or suffer consciously. Your heart is broken. Good. Now you have a reason to become dangerous. Not to others, but to your former self. You were soft. You tolerated things you shouldn't have. You didn't speak the truth. You ignored your gut. You confused comfort with connection. And now you've paid for it. But payment means ownership. You own this pain now, and what you do with it is everything. You can become bitter, small, vindictive, or you can become disciplined, sharp, and meaningful. People tell you to move on. That's nonsense. You don't move on. You move through the shame, through the anger, through the grief, through the humiliation, through the unbearable silence of nights where nothing feels real, and you come out the other side not as who you were, but as someone forged by reality. Someone capable of more than just survival. Someone capable of transformation. Don't let her breaking you be the end of you. Let it be the beginning. The beginning of a man who finally realizes he cannot rely on anyone else to give his life purpose. Not a lover, not a promise, not a fantasy. All of that can be taken. The only thing that remains is what you've built within yourself. That's why pain is a gift. It strips away the lies. It strips away dependency. It strips away illusion. And it leaves only the truth. Raw, brutal, and pure. You were wounded because you trusted. That's not a weakness. It's a strength you didn't know how to wield. Trust isn't the problem. Misplaced trust is. And now you've learned. Not just learned about her, but about yourself, about your patterns, about your desperation, about the parts of you that were willing to be small just to feel loved. That version of you died the moment she walked away. And that's good. He needed to die. The man who rises from heartbreak is not the same man who entered it. If he chooses to face it, if he chooses to confront his demons instead of projecting them, he emerges with eyes that see, eyes that recognize manipulation, eyes that understand value, eyes that no longer tolerate mediocrity in others or in himself. But only if he's willing to walk through hell without losing his integrity. So any men collapse under heartbreak because they've built their identity on being needed, on being chosen, on being wanted. But a man must build his identity on being worthy, whether chosen or not, whether loved or not. Because anything built on external validation is a house of cards. And when it falls, it must fall completely, so that something real can be built in its place. You want to get revenge. That's the language of boys. Get results. That's the language of men. Let your heartbreak become the soil where discipline takes root. Let your suffering turn into strategy. Let your confusion be clarity, not for her, not for anyone else. But because you are no longer willing to live at the mercy of someone else's acceptance. because you are no longer willing to be ruled by your wounds. Heartbreak is the universe telling you something has to change, and not on the outside, within you, your standards, your habits, your voice, your direction. This pain is a summons. You either answer it or you decay. You either evolve or you repeat. And if you repeat, the next woman will break your heart the same way. Not because she's the same, but because you are. So change, radically, relentlessly, and unapologetically. People think heartbreak is about the loss of love. It's not. It's about the loss of illusion. The illusion that someone could complete you. The illusion that love was owed. The illusion that being good is the same as being valuable. Break that illusion. Replace it with truth. You are not here to be completed. You are here to become whole. And then choose who deserves access to that wholeness. Let your heartbreak be your mentor. Let it teach you what the world couldn't. Let it tear down every false belief you've carried since childhood. Let it expose the parts of you that were starving for attention. Let it humble you. Let it sharpen you. Let it raise the bar so high that you never again tolerate anything beneath what is aligned with your highest values. This is the moment where boys are broken and men are built. The fire is real. The pain is deep. But so is the reward. If you endure it with your eyes open, you've been handed a sacred opportunity hidden in agony. Don't waste it. Don't numb it. Don't run from it. Step into it. Burn in it. Rise from it. And never, ever be the same again. Revenge feels righteous in the moment, but it's an illusion dressed as justice. When she breaks your heart, your first instinct is to balance the scale, to make her feel what you feel, to break her pride the way she broke your hope, to make her question her worth the way she made you question yours. That instinct is ancient. It lives in the deepest part of your brain. It is not civilized. It is not strategic. It is not strength. It is vengeance in the skin of insecurity, a weapon born from wounded pride. Your ego screams for retaliation because it is fragile. Ego is not strength. It is armor made of glass. And when someone cracks it, your first thought is not clarity, but chaos. You want to inflict damage, not because it will fix anything, because it momentarily numbs your sense of powerlessness. But the pain doesn't leave when you hurt her. It multiplies. It breeds. It grows into bitterness. And bitterness is a poison that doesn't touch the other person. It corrodes the soul that carries it. You think you're reclaiming dignity by hurting her, but that's not dignity. That's the ego hijacking your higher self and driving you into a narrative where you become the villain pretending he's the victim. If you need someone else to feel small so you can feel tall, you're not powerful. You're addicted to domination. And domination is a poor substitute for discipline. It's a for your own insecurities, not a path to peace. You weren't taught how to grieve, so you try to destroy. Because destruction feels like control. And in the aftermath of heartbreak, control feels like air to a drowning man. But this kind of control is counterfeit. It doesn't restore you. It rewires you for war. You start to see every woman as a threat. Every relationship becomes a game of leverage. Every soft moment is a setup. You think you're evolving, but you're devolving into someone suspicious, guarded, and disconnected from truth. The ego tells you to act quickly, to strike while the pain is fresh. But truth requires patience. Power requires restraint. Maturity means having every reason to destroy and choosing instead to rebuild. Not for her, not for anyone else, for the man you're becoming. That man doesn't chase retribution. He creates distance. He observes. He learns. And then, with quiet precision, he reshapes himself so thoroughly that no one can ever break him the same way again. Retaliation is emotional short-term gratification. It feels good for 10 minutes. Then comes the emptiness. Because deep down, you know revenge doesn't heal. It hardens. It takes what was soft and human in you and calcifies it into defense mechanisms. You start calling numbness strength. You start mistaking coldness for control. But control without connection is isolation. And isolation over time becomes a prison made of pride. She might have betrayed you. She might have lied, manipulated, disrespected, discarded. Yes, you have the right to be angry. But anger is a guest, not a guide. Let it pass through. Don't hand it the keys to your identity. Because if your personality is built on what someone else did to you, then you're not free. You're still reacting, still tethered to a moment you claim to hate. That's not power. That's bondage. The man who needs to punish her to feel whole is still her prisoner. You want to win. Then don't mirror her dysfunction. Rise above it. Learn from it. She may have acted from ego, but that doesn't mean you have to. You can choose principle over impulse. You can choose creation over destruction. You can let the betrayal carve wisdom into your spine. You can become unshakable, not through cruelty, but through clarity. Clarity about what you value. Clarity about what you'll never allow again. clarity about who you are, even when everything is taken from you. The cycle of revenge is a trap disguised as triumph. Every time you feed it, it grows stronger. Every act of ego-driven retaliation is a seed planted in the soil of dysfunction. And what grows from that soil is not strength, it's more chaos. You become the very thing you despise. You justify your toxicity with pain. You build your identity on rejection. And then you wonder why peace never stays. Because peace doesn't visit people who keep calling for war. Your future self is watching. The man you could become is waiting to see what you do next. Do you rise into something rare or fall into something common? Weak men stay in the cycle. They tell themselves they're warriors, but they're just wounded boys throwing stones at the ghosts of the past. Strong men walk away from that fire and build something sacred out of the ashes, not because it's easy, but because it's necessary. She may have wounded your pride, but your pride isn't your highest self. It's a fragile part of you screaming to be validated. Silence it. Look deeper. Beneath the pride is pain. Beneath the pain is truth. And beneath the truth is the path forward. You don't get there by shouting. You get there by surrendering to the lesson, not submitting to the pain, but harvesting its wisdom. Revenge is easy. It requires no discipline, no reflection, no strategy, just emotion on autopilot. But the man who can feel betrayal and still choose dignity, that man is dangerous in the best way. He can destroy, but he doesn't. He can expose, but he doesn't. He walks away, not because he's weak, but because he knows nothing worth having comes from the soil of petness. You're not here to play power games with people who don't respect themselves. You're here to master your own nature, to tame the fire inside you so it becomes light, not wildfire, to feel pain and still choose purpose, to face rejection and still speak truth, to be disrespected and still build. That is the path of the uncommon man. That is the standard that separates the average from the awakened. The ego wants revenge because the ego fears being forgotten. But legacy isn't built in moments of spite. Legacy is built in the silence of self-control, in the decision to rise above drama, in the refusal to entertain chaos. When you hold the sword and choose not to swing, you become something more than just a man with a broken heart. You become a man who knows who he is, regardless of how others treat him. Don't let a temporary storm turn you into someone permanently small. Don't let her failure to love you turn into your failure to lead yourself. You were not born to be bitter. You were not built to break others just because you were broken. You were born to feel the full weight of reality and carry it with strength, grace, and precision. You were born to take the hit and still move forward without losing your soul. You want to be powerful, but you think power is found in dominance. You think it's in cold words, silent treatments, or clever comebacks designed to cut deeper than the wound you carry. That isn't power. That's theater. That's ego on parade, begging for validation under the mask of control. Real power doesn't posture. Real power doesn't scream for attention. It walks in silence and holds the room without raising its voice. Responsibility is the origin of true authority. The moment you take full ownership of your actions, your reactions, your inner world, you stop being a victim. When you stop blaming her, stop blaming timing, stop blaming circumstance, you begin to grow into something formidable. The man who accepts responsibility, even for what wasn't his fault, becomes untouchable because now he's working with truth, and truth doesn't flinch. The pettiness that tempts you after heartbreak is not strength, it's regression. It drags you backwards into a version of yourself that is reactive, insecure, and constantly seeking petty wins to compensate for real losses. Pettiness is emotional junk food. It feeds the hunger for attention but leaves the soul empty. Every sarcastic text, every passive-aggressive comment, every performative flex online. It all reeks of desperation disguised as detachment. The man who confuses bitterness with boundaries hasn't done the work. He thinks emotional distance is growth, when it's actually just fear with a fresh coat of paint. He's not moving on. He's hiding. And you can't build anything meaningful in hiding. You can't lead yourself or anyone else while avoiding the battlefield within you, because responsibility is not passive. It's war. War against the parts of you that want to stay small, petty, and wounded. You don't rise by bringing others down. You rise by standing when you could fall, by choosing discipline when chaos feels easier, by looking in the mirror and saying, "This pain ends with me." You cannot change her, but you can change the part of you that allowed what happened to happen. That is not self-blame. That is self-awareness. That is the birthplace of power that doesn't need permission from anyone else to exist. There is no strength in humiliation. There is no wisdom in revenge. There is no glory in breaking someone's spirit to feel taller. That is the path of tyrants, not leaders. That is the action of a man ruled by his wounds. When you see a man who has been betrayed and yet chooses to become more honest, more disciplined, more precise, the man is walking the path of kings. Not because he dominates, but because he refines. A man who learns how to regulate his emotions becomes a man who can govern nations. He becomes a man who can raise sons with strength and daughters with safety. He becomes a man who doesn't crumble under pressure because he has already faced his own chaos and refused to run. And that man doesn't need to belittle a woman to feel significant. He doesn't need to retaliate. He doesn't need a stage. He already knows who he is. Responsibility is the heaviest crown you will ever wear. It doesn't come with applause. It comes with silence, repetition, and lonely decisions no one will ever see. But it gives you a foundation so unshakable that no betrayal can tear it down. Pettiness builds castles out of sand. Responsibility lays stone. Every habit you develop in pain becomes a fortress for your future. Every time you choose growth over reaction, you build something that lasts. Your future self isn't watching how clever your insults were. He's watching whether you had the discipline to hold your tongue when it burned to lash out. Whether you chose to train when you felt like disappearing. Whether you studied while others gossiped. Whether you created when you could have destroyed. These are the choices that separate men who merely exist from men who lead. To take responsibility means you don't wait for apologies that never come. You don't beg for closure. You close the door yourself, clean the house of your mind, and build a home there that no one can invade. Pettiness waits for someone else to suffer. Power moves forward regardless. And the man who moves forward in silence creates gravity around him. Others feel it. They sense it. They respect it, even if they don't understand it. You cannot wield power until you've mastered yourself. You cannot master yourself until you've confronted your resentment. You cannot confront your resentment until you stop feeding it. Pettiness feeds resentment like oxygen to fire. Every spiteful act reinforces your powerlessness. Every act of ownership weakens it. And this is the truth people run from, that healing is not a feeling, it's a decision made in the dark, without witnesses, over and over again. You want to be feared. Try being respected. You want to be in control. Try being responsible. Anyone can manipulate. Anyone can ghost. Anyone can win an argument and lose their soul in the process. It takes a different kind of man to rise, not in defiance, but in clarity, not in vengeance, but in vision. That man terrifies people who live in ego because he doesn't play by their rules. He doesn't chase. He doesn't retaliate. He rebuilds. A responsible man is slow to speak, quick to listen, and even quicker to act on principle. He doesn't gossip. He doesn't boast. He doesn't hide behind distractions. He meets his reality head on, without excuses. When his heart is broken, he feels it fully. And when it's time to rise, he does so without waiting for the world to give him permission. He doesn't ask if he's ready. He prepares in the shadows until he is undeniable. The path of responsibility requires sacrifice. You have to give up the easy wins. You have to give up being liked. You have to give up the need to always be right. You have to give up your addiction to being seen. And in return, you get substance. You get inner structure. You get peace that isn't dependent on how others treat you. You become dangerous in the best way. Not because you harm, but because you cannot be harmed by nonsense anymore. Pettiness is cheap currency. It buys you approval from broken people. Responsibility is high cost, high reward. It builds a legacy. It builds depth. It builds a man who doesn't flinch when abandoned, doesn't beg when misunderstood, and doesn't fold when tested. Because he's already been through the fire. And he chose to become forged instead of fractured. When she walks away, the silence she leaves behind becomes the proving ground of who you really are. No applause, no reassurance, no hand reaching back to fix what was broken. You're alone with the debris. And that is exactly where you find your strength. Because when no one is watching, when no one is validating, when no one is clapping, you are forced to answer one question. Will you rise anyway? Most men collapse in the absence of attention. They crave it like a drug. They post, they hint, they manipulate, hoping she's still watching, hoping someone notices the pain dressed up as confidence. But the man who rises without the eyes of the crowd is the man no storm can shake. He doesn't perform. He doesn't beg. He rebuilds with blood in his teeth and silence in his heart. There is no virtue in becoming great if you only do it for revenge, because then she still owns you. She becomes the author of your transformation, and that is not freedom. That is emotional servitude. If everything you build is rooted in the need to be seen, you will always be at the mercy of those who withhold their gaze. That is not victory. That is dependency in disguise. Real growth begins when the noise dies, when the texts stop, when the attention fades, When the distractions fall silent and you're left face to face with your rawest self. No masks, no filters, just the echo of your thoughts bouncing off the walls of a mind under reconstruction. That space is sacred, and most fear it, because in that place, there are no shortcuts, no external approval, just the grind. You must learn to become the man who needs nothing to become everything. The man who can be betrayed, ridiculed, ignored, and still wake with discipline in his bones and fire in his chest. Because the most terrifying kind of man is not the one who reacts, it's the one who refines, that shout, who doesn't flex, who sharpens his mind, strengthens his body, and elevates his soul without needing a single hand to clap. Validation is a mirage that disappears the moment you reach for it. The people you crave it from are often the least capable of giving it. And yet you hand them the keys to your self-worth as if their opinion can resurrect your broken identity. It cannot. Only you can do that. Not through being seen, but through becoming undeniable, even if no one ever acknowledges it. You must train when there's no one to watch. Study when there's no one to reward you. Sacrifice when there's no recognition. Because every time you choose progress without praise, you build an inner structure that no one can take from you. The applause will come and go. The likes will fade. But the man you become when no one's watching, that man is permanent. When your heart breaks, the world expects you to spiral, to chase, to post cryptic messages, to fall into the same pit millions have died in. But you have the opportunity to do something rare, to take that collapse and turn it into a crucible, to become the kind of man who rebuilds without making a sound. And when they look for your reaction, all they see is momentum. Rebuilding in silence is not weakness, it is warfare. Every rep you lift, every book you finish, every habit you lock in is a missile launched at the version of yourself that needed her to feel alive. You're not just becoming stronger. You're declaring war on dependency, on needness, on weakness, and no one needs to see it to make it real. You are not here to impress her. You are here to transcend her, to outgrow the entire chapter she belongs to reach such clarity that you can thank the betrayal, but not because it didn't hurt, because it exposed how much of your identity was built on fragile ground. And now, brick by brick, you are constructing something eternal. The man who can suffer in silence without becoming bitter is more powerful than armies. Because his mind is no longer swayed by emotion or reaction. He moves on principle. He speaks only when necessary. He acts not from wounds, but from wisdom. And his presence alone silences the room. Not because he demands it, but because he earned it in the shadows. She may never see what you become. She may never acknowledge the beast you built in the ruins. And that is a gift. Because the minute you need her recognition to feel whole, you give her power over your progress. Let your victories be private. Let your transformation be unannounced. And let your life become so elevated that her absence feels irrelevant, not tragic. The hunger to prove something to the person who left is rooted in insecurity. It means you still believe they have the final word on your worth. They don't. No one does. The moment you stop needing them to know what they lost is the moment you reclaim your crown. Because the greatest revenge is not in being noticed. It's in becoming unreachable. You are not broken because someone walked away. You are only broken if you stay there waiting for them to notice. Get up, build, sculpt, write, train, educate yourself until you are mentally sharp, emotionally unshakable, and physically unstoppable. Make it so that the next time they think of you, it's not with power, it's with silence, because you are no longer in their orbit. Every minute spent proving yourself is a minute stolen from becoming yourself. And no man can afford to waste his life broadcasting pain when he could be engineering power. Real growth doesn't announce itself. It doesn't advertise. It doesn't explain. It just arrives, complete and commanding. And when it enters the room, people feel it. Even the ones who said you'd never make it. She may have left you, but you are still here, breathing, thinking, moving. And that means the outcome is still yours to decide. Do not let heartbreak become your legacy. Let it become the ignition switch. Not a wall, but a door. And walk through it with the quiet certainty of a man who knows exactly what he's becoming. You owe it to your future self not to live in reaction to your past. You owe it to the man inside you who is waiting to be awakened. The man who doesn't need a stage, doesn't need to post proof, doesn't need to whisper to the world that he's leveling up. He just does it, quietly, ferociously, without permission, because real victory doesn't crave attention. It creates momentum. It doesn't post quotes. It becomes one. And when the dust settles, when the applause never comes, when the crowd is silent, you will still be standing. Not because someone clapped, but because you rebuilt yourself into someone who never needed the noise in the first place.